What is going on, Mullen fans? Maybe I should have just waited another half hour and we would have had our 10K. So you're seeing the price get shook up, and we knew this wasn't going to be pretty, right? If you know anything about Mullen and what they're doing, you had a pretty good idea that this is going to be a rough report. It can be a very rough week. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. So anyway, keep in mind a couple of things. Right, this is filed late, but it's up until September 30th, 2022. So that would be their fiscal year. That is what they're filing for. So that's kind of what is included in here. Obviously, yes, they're filing it late, so they do have a little bit more inclination, but I don't think legally they have to give us anything more than probably what they knew up until that point or what was going on there. So some of these things we've anticipated, we've talked about, we've went over. Some of you guys that are familiar with the company, you're definitely, you know what's going on. If you just invested in it, jumping in for a short squeeze, like I've been saying, I'm not here for a short squeeze. I don't think we have the short interest even for a short squeeze, and we have a ridiculously large float. So with that said, we'll just go over this briefly. I do encourage you guys to, look it up, sec.gov, and just search your ticker, MULN. You can pull it up and read it in detail, but it goes over quite a bit of things. It gives us a nice little layout here in the table of contents, kind of some of the scary talking points, and then if you scroll down a little bit later, it kind of eases into some of these, or just tries to make a logical understanding of why they would say this. Now, a lot of this is protection on Mullen's behalf. Investors are, they get irritated with the company and they expect them to deliver or whatever. So they're just giving you some forward-looking statements that saying, hey, look, we're a startup EV company. It is what it is. You should have known some of these things. So it says they've incurred significant loss since inception, and they expect that will continue. Right? Obviously, it's going to continue. As we've said, they are not selling cars right now. They got to get through production. Production's going to cost them money, and we know how they're raising the money because we've been talking about the float and dilution and how many shares are out there, and we've been talking about the vote and the request to have so many more additional shares, which I do think will be followed up by a reverse split. So if you're in Mullen for the long term, like I've said, I think this is going to be a long, painful hold. And that's why I was flipping for pennies in two of my accounts, just making my long term a little bit more bearable, if not almost free, or taking a lot of that risk off, because I had those in there, but I was not going to average them down. It is what it is. And, the other two accounts I was flipping so that whatever Mullen does, good or bad, I'll either be happy or I just won't care at that point. So that's why I was approaching it the way that I was, and I still am. I still have my Mullen in my long term, and it's going to sit there for now. I am telling you, I'm nervous about what all's going to go on, but I'm just kind of taking it one day at a time, and I'm not risking any more than I'm willing to lose. So keep that in mind as well. So obviously they have limited operating history, so they don't really know what's going to go on in the future. They haven't sold any production vehicles to customers, and it says they may never develop or manufacture any vehicles. So we're working on that, but they're just saying, hey, no promises, right? We haven't done anything yet, and we'll see where it goes. But again, we're talking about September 2022. That's really all they have to give us in this information. So we do know that they've diluted the float quite a bit, and that's one of the ways that they continue to pay for things, make acquisitions, raise capital for hopefully what's going to be production and whatever we need moving forward. So whenever that vote goes through and they need more shares, I'm telling you, we are going to get diluted. I don't know when, I don't know at what point, but whenever they need money, we're going to see it. You'll see it in the charts. I almost think so. They have limited operating history to face significant challenges as a new entrant into the automotive industry. Obviously, they're working on it. They're just a concept to a degree as far as when this filing was. So we're looking for production so that they can actually become a company and start selling some cars. They may fail to perform as expected. I mean, if you're just reading through some of this stuff, yeah, it's really scary and it's a lot of negative things. But I also don't think retail is the one that's been pushing the price over the past, what have we covered this, a month or so? Maybe a little bit longer, month and a half. So that tells me that there's big money, big institutions that are, they're the ones that are moving the market. And why are they putting money into something? Some of them have to, but some of them might know a little bit more, or they might think that it's worth assuming that risk for them. Time will tell, as to if they made a good decision or not. But we're just gonna kind of keep an eye on how everything's moving, because like I said, I think this next week is going to be a very interesting week, and I guess we kicked it off here in after hours because we actually have it. So we know that they acquired Elms. That's going to cost them money. They have installments that are coming out on that. We've covered that in a video. So I was saying I do think there'll be dilution, or somehow they're going to have to come up with that money to be able to make their installments. So there's going to be some sort of something going on there, right? What else do we have? It said there was about 1.7 billion shares out there, which we anticipated. As far as the float goes, in the past, we've made a video on that as well. So that's been covered in here, which means, David is pretty much out of shares at this point. If he's saying as of the filing that we got 1.7 billion or just shy of there out there in the float. Yeah. So what else can we point out that would be Bollinger Motors acquisition? We already know about that. It does say that in the case of a bankruptcy, their common shareholders, I think, will be last in line for anything that they're entitled. Our limited operating history makes it difficult for us to evaluate the future. We have not paid cash dividends. We may not be able to maintain compliance with the continued listing requirements of the NASDAQ. Obviously, you know what that is, a buck. How are they going to get there? We know they'll either do the reverse split or they will file for an extension, and we'll see if there's enough good news that pushes it. It's going to be a pretty significant amount of money to see it push there, but it could. If they have extra warrants or anything out there, it says that they can do whatever they need to do, basically, to create shares for any of those necessary ones. Our stockholders are subject to significant dilution upon the occurrence of certain events, which could result in a decrease in our stock price. So here's where it talks a little bit about some of the shares that are out there. And like I said, I do think there will be future dilution that's going to come in, and especially whenever production starts ramping up and employees and all of that starts hitting the payroll, they're going to have to come up with that money from somewhere. They may experience significant delays in design, manufacturer, regulatory approval, things along those lines. So, I mean, this is all, it's not great to read through, but it should be things that you should anticipate if you're investing in a startup EV, looking forward and hoping that it turns into an actual company. So I didn't see anything that really we haven't covered in a video that struck me as new. But hey, maybe we're just a little bit smarter here on this channel, and we think with our heads, and we can come to logical decisions, and some people can't, which could be why you seen the shakeup. When did it file? Around 4:30, 4:45. So got a pretty big shakeup right there in muln whenever that went down. Still sitting at 31 cents post market. So again, hopefully you guys are still green and you can still make a decision, right? The market hasn't closed yet, so it's up to you. Either you roll it or you don't. It doesn't matter. To me, it's your shares. You do what you want to do with it. Do I think some shorts will come in off of that filing? Yeah, I do. But also, let's see if we get anything good to go along next week as well. I think we'd be getting close to some sort of update on IGO. I think they're going to try to at least give us a little bit of something positive to go with a couple of the big hits that we're going to be taking as of today and whenever we find out the company's decision as far as the vote went. But read through it, guys. There's a lot here, and it's nothing that I want to read to you word for word. Anything that I think that you need me to read to you word for word, but you should go through it and make a lot. So looking into some of the numbers and everything that goes along with this 10K, we kind of expected it, right? I was saying, as they start to get into production, hopefully, and trying to roll out some of this, whatever they want to do, with all their different ventures, it's going to cost them money. So we're looking at what's going on with the 10K as far as how their expenses changed. It says their net loss was $740.3 million for the 12 months that ended September 30th. That was a pretty substantial increase, but again, they have things going on now that they did not have going on the year prior. So 1,573% increase from the year prior. But again, they have, what are we doing now? Here we got the interest expense increased 5.8 million. Professional services, marketing, payroll all increased. So they have quite a bit of items that are costing them money now. If you look through here and you take a look at some of those numbers and figures that are going in and where the money's kind of going, I would keep an eye on all of that. We knew that they weren't going to be cash flow positive. We knew that this wasn't going to be the prettiest figures that you've ever saw by any means. And we got them. So let's see how they continue to do with their costs, their overhead, how they continue to raise some capital, and is that going to affect us, and how bad is it going to affect the holders? So keep an eye on that as well, or as to how long you want to be involved in muln, how much you're willing to risk, how long you're willing to wait. Do you have the same vision or not? And just kind of go from there. If you do, if you still like it, if you think they're going to do something, and if you think that it's worth the long, painful hold, then okay. But if you think, hey, I'm green and I might want to move on to another play and just do something else, totally understand that too. So you guys got to make your own decision. Again, I wish I would have just waited a half hour and I would have been able to cover this a little bit more in the first video, but it is what it is. Have a good weekend, guys. I will catch you in the next one. As always, stay golden, people, and may your accounts stay green.